So our next presenter is Gary Milton with Weights and Measures. He's going to talk about weights and measures as well as the labeling, the signage, etc., price per pound, and all that kind of good stuff that you as farmers market managers need to know.
Thank you for having me. My name is Gary Milton. I'm the program manager for the Office of Weights and Measures under VDACS. And just as everybody else, I'll give you just a little overview of our office. We're responsible for commercial weighing and measuring devices in Virginia. And that can include anything from scales, meters, gas pumps, jewelry scales, up to vehicle scales, large capacity vehicle scales. Our office also does point of sale inspections where they use scanners to ring up the price. We verify that the price posted is the same as the price that rings up. We also do check weighing, package check weighing in grocery stores and other places, just to ensure that the net weight content is what's labeled. And we collect fuel samples. Last year, we collected over 5,000 samples in our office. And we also handle a lot of consumer complaints. We did a little over 500 consumer complaints last year. So just a brief overview of that. We also administer the Public Weighmaster Program, commissioned merchants and cotton handlers, and the motor fuel program. For today, what I was asked is how weights and measures applies to farmers market. So with that, here are some of the topics that I had picked out for today. Types of sale, which are sales to consumers, methods of sale, which applies to products, labeling of products, and I know we've heard a lot of labeling today, but this is just from the weights and measures perspective, and then scales, requirements of scales to be used. So let's see if I can advance. For types of sale, we'll see direct sale versus prepackaged sale. And in a direct sale, items will be sold from bulk. The consumer will come up, select the product. It'll either be weighed at that time. It can be sold by count. It can be sold by measure, or even bunch. It can be sold by that. But the consumer can select the product. And the prepackaged, we see the product is either weighed or counted or bunched or whatever. It's packaged up. It's displayed for sale. The consumer selects the package of product. And just a couple of examples. On the left, you'll see where the consumer looks like has selected something, handing it to the business owner to be weighed. And notice there you see the scale and how the scale is oriented, so the display is toward the consumer. And I'll cover that a little bit later. In the picture to the right, you see some products that packaged, and there appears to be a label on those packages. So just give you a visual of direct sale versus pre-packed sale. A little more information. With the direct sales, no label required. Items can be sold by weight, count, volume, or measure. And if weight, scales must be compliant with requirements, and I'll cover some of those a little later on. Prepackaged sale, you see label required. I'll have a little more information on that as well, but that's, you know, a big difference between the two. Package, if it's stated, if it sold by weight, it's got to state the net weight or net quantity if it's sold by count or measure. And there it says tare weight must be taken if sold by weight. And just a little bit more information there. The tare weight is any of the wrapper, vessel, any part of the commodity that is not actually part, any part of the package not actually part of the commodity is tare weight. And one instance I use, if you go in a grocery store and they pack, say, ground beef there and overwrap it on a tray pack, that tray, if it's depending on if it's a drip pad in there, the wrapper, the label, all of that is considered tare, and it must be taken off prior to that product being calculated the weight for sale. So, and the net weight, you see there's basically the difference between the gross weight and the tare weight. And one thing that we've run across, or people will ask us about, well, I put my wrapper, tray, whatever on the scale and it doesn't register, then do I have to take a tare off? Yes, you do. You have to take one scale division off for that tare. It has to be accounted for. When our inspectors go in and do check weighing, they will take tare and may take 2 or 3 of the packages, weigh it, average it, and then that's what they deduct to ensure that the net weight is correct. Moving on, methods of sale. And here we have the method of sale. This is how certain commodities are to be sold. And this applies to the commodity. Here we see I have the Virginia Code, and basically it says liquid commodities in liquid form shall be sold by liquid measure or weight. Commodities not in liquid form may be sold by weight, measure of length, area, or by count. And provision shall not apply, and there are a couple of instances where it will not apply. Is one, take a look at Roman numeral 2, vegetables when sold by head or bunch. They are allowed to be sold that way or in containers standardized by law. And different commodities may be sold multiple ways. One thing I'll use as an example will be apples. Apples can be sold by weight, by count, or by volume. Still within that regulation, the uniform regulation for method of sale of commodities, and that's adopted by the National Conference on Weights and Measures and published in the National Institute of Standards and Technology Handbook 130, which our office uses this for regulatory enforcement. In the next slide, this is from Handbook 130, and it gives you, if you look at the top there, it says method of sale for fresh fruits and vegetables, specific commodity. So over on the left side, it lists the commodity. Then it gives you how that method of sale may be applied. Look down there, you see peppers, bell peppers, all the varieties may be sold by weight, by count, or by measure. So just something there that you can use if you're a little not sure how you may be able to sell it. That will tell you. And then the next slide I have says general commodity group. So what doesn't fall in that first slide, if you're selling these, then you can look over in this slide and see how you may sell it. Moving on to labeling, and as I said, this is going to be labeling from the perspective of weights and measures. And what I will say, if you're selling a commodity or labeling a commodity that is under another regulatory program, you may check with that regulatory program because they may have more specific requirements for labeling than what weights and measures has. Weights and measures pretty much has 3 basic things that we require on a label. Again, this is from the Code of Virginia. And you look, the first one is identity of the commodity, the net quantity of the commodity, and then the place of business or manufacturer. Again, we use Handbook 130, Uniform Regulation for Packaging and Labeling, for our regulatory requirements as far as labeling goes for commodities. And again, you know, Weights and Measures does a multitude of things. Not all food commodities. It may be anything from soaps or just any kind of different commodity that's sold you know, this labeling applies to. And just to break it down again, declaration of identity, declaration of quantity, declaration of responsibility. I see you had a question pop up. What is a dry measure? That would be like a quart container or some kind of, you see berries and baskets, you know, that's considered a dry measure. For identity, it says, you know, just what is a product? The quantity is how much does a product weigh, or what is the volume, or what is the count. And then I know we've had some more talk about the address line or signature line, but we call it declaration of responsibility, but who made, produced, or was responsible for the product. Under the declaration of identity, it appears on the principal display panel, or PDP, you may hear it referred to, and generally parallel to the base of the package. And what the PDP is most what somebody will see when they look at the item for sale. You know, what's the thing that they will see the most, but the same requirements apply to the principal display panel or any of the other panels that may be on the side. In the specific name, again, refer back maybe to some of the other regulatory agencies is what they have, but it's usually, it's a federal or state regulation to that for that name. The common or usual name, or if nothing else, a generic name or appropriate description included. For declaration of quantity, for the most part, should appear in the lower 30% of the panel, display panel. Prominently displayed, color that contrast. I mean, you want people, you want to put the effort into making the label, you want people to be able to see what the label says. Type, lettering, there may be some requirements for height, you need to check. And see, generally includes both the SI is metric units or customary units. That's for items that are in a standardized weight count on weight is what that's going to refer to. So if you are packaging items that are in 1 pound packages, then that applies. If it's random weight packages, say you're weighing it out, packaging it, labeling as you weigh it out, that's a random package and it does not apply. Just see some more of the information that is required. One thing that you don't want to see is like somebody say a full pound or a jumbo quart. Those are not allowed. It's either a pound or a quart. And random weight packages in a lot. And I didn't include this, maybe I should have, but if it's a random weight package and it showed, then it shall bear the total selling price, and it also shall bear the price per unit of weight, measure, or count. So if you're randomly weighing ground beef and you're charging $5 a pound, then it needs to state that price per pound as well as the total selling price for that commodity. Advertising, if you're going to be advertising from bulk, say if you've got a tray, going back to ground beef, if you have a tray there, you need to advertise that bulk commodity price. You know, what are you selling it for per unit? So if somebody wants it, they know, and it's for consumer comparisons. So they'll know what they're paying for. Declaration of responsibility. Again, I think this was pretty well covered in some of the other presenters' slides, so I won't dwell on that, but just, you know, it has to be on there unless for weights and measures, unless it's being packaged at the place where it's being sold. So if you're at a farmer's market and you're packaging there at the farmer's market and labeling, you don't have to put the declaration of responsibility because you're packaging on site. Moving on to scales, and I know I'm getting through this pretty quick, but scales used in direct sales must be legal for trade. For commercial trade, they must be legal for trade, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what that is. It's some standards that they have to meet. But we see and have run across from time to time somebody using scales that are not legal for trade. Just some of the examples of baby scales, bathroom scales, restaurant portioning scales, scales like that, they are not legal for trade. And here we have, again, Virginia Code and specifications and tolerances for weighing measuring devices. And in that, it lists that we use, again, NIST Handbook 44. We use 3 handbooks in our office, 44, 130, and 133. But 44 we adopt in its entirety. And the list right there in the code what has to be for that scale to be legal for trade. And just from Handbook 44, and this applies to commercial weighing and measuring equipment, and which includes scales. It has to be suitable for what it's being used for. You have to have, if you're weighing something that's liquid, you have to have a weighing pan that can capture that liquid. You don't, if it's if you're weighing apples, you can have a flat pan to capture the apples to weigh, but it has to meet those requirements. One important thing is the identification. And it says all equipment except certain necessary parts, but basically all scales you're going to purchase nowadays need to have a data plate or a identity plate on them, which gives you the name of the manufacturer, distributor, the model, a serial number, and then especially down in E, in-depth evaluation program certificate of conformance number. And what that in-depth evaluation program is a manufacturer will develop a scale or a weighing or measuring device. They submit it to this program to be evaluated so that it is suitable for use. They assign, once they have tested it, they assign it a certificate of conformance number. And that's one of the things we look for specifically when we check or inspect scales. Also, position of equipment, as I had in the one slide, the position of where the equipment was displayed so the customer could see the weight as it was being weighed. If you're using a scale, make sure you have it displayed so the customer can see that weight as it comes up. As an example I use a lot of times, you go in a grocery store and when they're weighing your produce on the scale at the checkout, they'll have the little indicator up there so you can see what it weighs. So it's kind of the same thing here. All commercial weighing devices are class 3 that will be used here. There are different classes. Class 1 is like a scientific scale that's used in a laboratory. Class 2 can be like prescription scales, or could be scales used for precision gem weighing, but most of what we're going to be using or what we see out are class 3 scales. So it has to be a class 3 scale, and suggestion that it may be purchased from a registered service agent, which they are registered with the Office of Weights and Measures, and they can place that scale into service, or you can purchase them on the internet. Be careful, make sure that it meets the requirements for a scale, has a certificate of conformance, it's an in-depth approved, it's a legal for trade scale. If you have any questions on that, you can contact our office so we can help you take a look. Also, if you purchase one, you should contact our office, have our inspectors come out, test it, and inspect it. I will say just a couple more items to go along with that. We have and do with farmers markets, and I looked back last year, we did 41 farmers markets. They have contacted our office, set up for an inspector to come out. The vendors come out, bring their scales. The inspector will test the scales, inspect the scales there for use throughout the year. Like I said, last year we did 41 farmers markets. We had 183 vendors and 308 scales. So that, I know I flew through that pretty quick, but just wrapped up. Any questions?
We do have some questions, and before I jump into those in a Q&A, if a market manager wants you to come out to their vendor kickoff meeting and look at the scales, how best to contact? Should they just contact the Office of Weights and Measures?
I'll contact the Office of Weights and Measures. I think
Okay.
on the next slide, I have the contact information there.
Awesome.
So
We've dropped that in the chat also.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of vendor kickoff meetings, and I know y'all are thrilled to come out and look at the scales and do that. So I actually have a couple of specific questions from your presentation. A question on net weight. We have a base net weight. However, sometimes our products are a bit denser. So the net weight going into the bag is higher than what is on the label. Is that okay?
Yes, it can weigh over, it can't weigh under.
Okay. Is there a ceiling as to how much it can weigh over?
No, not
Okay.
really. You don't want to be giving products away, but you don't
Right.
want to be shorting someone either. So, and
Okay.
there is, getting into specifics that my inspectors are a lot better at than I am when they go to do check weighs, is, the variance in those packages, which, we have certain documents that we use to be able to monitor that. So, but as a general rule, you don't want to give a lot of product away, but you don't want a short weight.
Okay. So a clamshell container of fresh mushrooms must have a label that contains all this information.
If it's packaged and brought to the farmer's market,
Yes.
or packaged at the farmer's market, it needs a label on it. If it's in a package form, it needs a label.
Okay. Must the total price always be displayed?
If you're doing random weight packages, then you need the total price on it, yes. And unit price.
Unit price and total price.
Yes.
Okay, great. I think that is the last of the packaging.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What about Gary, bagged green? Would that need?
If they're going to be packaged prior to,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You worked with us quite a bit last year on labeling, and were very gracious in sending us the pages out of the regulations, which is a lot of regulations. So thanks for sending us the specific pages that impacted us. We really appreciate it.
Well, again, just last thought, as I said in the presentation, if it's a specific item that falls under another regulatory program, say a food item that would fall under dairy and foods, be sure to check with them about their labeling requirements. As hate to say it, but kind of a catch-all type labeling requirements. We have a minimum on it, and it's if it doesn't fall for somebody else.
All right. Looking real quick to see if there's any last. What about cookies baked good packaged individually? Does it need all that info? So if you have a cookie in a package to sell at a farmer's market, does it need to have the label with all that info?
As far as I know, yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
That was
All
perfect.
right.
We've got your contact information in the chat. Really appreciate you reaching out. If you want him to come to your vendor kickoff meetings or want him to come to any of your meetings, please reach out to the office and Weights and Measures will be happy to show up. So I would like to say a special thanks to all of our partners. Again, the Virginia Department of Health, Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, Virginia Cooperative Extension, and the Virginia Family Nutrition Program, as well as the USDA, FMPP, Farm Credit, VSU College of Agriculture, Prince Charitable Trust, Virginia Fresh Match, and the Virginia's for Farmers Market Lovers Trail and Virginia's for Farmers Market Lovers. We thank you.